We are continuing on with section 106 now this afternoon. Warned of Herod, Jesus laments Jerusalem where he must die. Let me remind us that we are in the Perean ministry. Jesus having come in to the area of Perea, that is east of the Jordan River. That's the one that typically throws people, is that area. You never really hear about that. You hear about Galilee and you hear about Judea. I'm sorry? East of the Jordan River. So section 106, it's going to be based on Luke 13, verses 31 to 35. We'll read this scripture complete. It's a short passage. It says, "The same day there came certain of the Pharisees, saying unto him, Get thee out and depart hence, for Herod will kill thee. And he said unto them, Go ye and tell that fox, Behold, I cast out devils, and I do cures today and tomorrow, and the third day I shall be perfected. Nevertheless, I must walk today and tomorrow and the day following, for it cannot be that a prophet perish out of Jerusalem. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which killest the prophets and stonest them that are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, as a hen doth gather her brood under her wings, and you would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate, and verily I say unto you, you shall not see me until the time come when you shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord." Okay, we've got question number 610, though, to start off with. By the way, we're definitely going to finish this section. Let's see how it feels to do the next section also. We'll see how that goes. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely do that section.
We should be able to finish that off.
We'll finish that one off in short order. No, that's okay. That's good to point out. Section 108, yeah, because section 107, something similar is covered over on page 180. So here we go. And by the way, this is a great passage. I love this one. It's got one of the key passages that you want to use when you're dealing with apologetics. Question 610, what was Jesus' response to Herod's death threat? What was Jesus' response to Herod's death threat? And we already read that scripture, so we can go straight to the answer there. And the answer is B indeed. He boldly challenged him with the teaching of his death and resurrection after 3 days, but not in Perea. Okay. Let's look at C. Okay, he had to avoid him since it was not his time to die. Well, as we look at C, he started to gather an army to meet him in battle. Well, we're reminded that Jesus did not have an earthly kingdom that he was trying to set up. And so he did not give him a political response. There is going to come a time when he is going to do battle. That's going to be at the Battle of Armageddon. But it's going to be against the entire world, not just this puny little tetrarchy. What's a tetrarchy? Tetrarchy comes from tetra, meaning a fourth, and archy from to rule, and it was how Palestine had been divided up into 4 sections. Yes. Okay.
What's it called when you have like a Herod where he was a fake king?
Oh, no, that was Herod the Great, and he was not really, it was a usurper.
What's the title of it? Like a fox king?
A faux king, F-A-U-X. Oh, okay, yeah. No, this is different. Yeah, totally different. Yeah, faux king. He's referring to Herod the Great, who was an Idumean. He was from Edom and was like a Jewish convert, and he was claiming the Jewish throne. This is that was the Herod who had the infants killed. Okay, and so that was the beginning of, and it was after his death that his kingdom was split up into a tetrarchy. There were four parts that were being ruled by his descendants. Well, one of them got handed over to Pilate because I can't remember which king tried to make himself there. He fell out of favor with Rome, and so he didn't get to have his portion of that kingdom. Okay, this is a different Herod. Now, by the way, which Herods they are, I refer you to the handout that we gave at the beginning of the class that has the whole lineage of Herod and his descendants. What you can do is, if you want to see that, go to pbchurch.com/cell. That'll put you on the page that has all of the lessons that we had, and as you scroll and scroll and scroll down to the bottom, you'll find the handout that we had concerning which Herod was which. So, we should remember, though, that we are not fighting against flesh and blood. Jesus was not against flesh and blood. We're fighting against principalities and powers and wickedness in high places. We should realize that although we want to change the world, okay, just like Jesus, our battle is different than the ones fought in the political arenas with its methods. By all means, go ahead and fight that battle somewhere, but not as a church. Okay, for B, the correct answer. He boldly challenged them with the teaching of his death and resurrection after 3 days, but it was not going to be in Perea. We're reminded that sometimes we can get caught up in reacting to people who challenge us. Okay, Jesus did not engage Herod on his terms and on his concerns. It can form a distraction from doing the things that we're supposed to be doing. This can happen in debate a lot of times where somebody is framing the debate. That's what they call it. You want to frame the debate. You want to set up the things that you're going to talk about, not the things necessarily that they want to talk about. Okay, so it's similar to what Nehemiah had gone through when he was rebuilding the temple. In that case, they had his detractors, and they were trying to draw him away from the work and to argue with him. Well, Jesus was on a mission and knew what the heart of Herod was, so that he would not be distracted from that mission. And Herod will later on want to try to get to see Jesus when it comes to his trial, because he was very curious about him and would have liked to have seen some miracle that he would have done. Okay, so when you look at the A answer, he had to avoid him since it was not his time to die. Well, it is sometimes said that discretion is the better part of valor. What is discretion is the better part of valor mean? Anybody have a clue?
As wisdom would avoid getting entangled in something he cannot win, so he will take with his time until he has a chance of being able to win the battle.
Yes, yes. Valor, when you are very brave, you're valorous. Valor means to be brave. And you might be very brave and courageous, but sometimes it's better to not push forward because you're all courageous and everything, you have a lot of courage. Sometimes it's better to have the discretion to hold back and choose which argument you're going to press. Okay, so in Jesus' case, it was not his time to die, and he did what was typically done in other cases. He avoided Herod rather than getting ensnared with him. Jesus' response that he had his day in which to do his work. In other words, it was not yet his time to die. It was not his day to do that. Let me get Brother Joe first and then Brother Tone. And let me get you a microphone on that.
184.
Okay. Okay, Brother Tone, yes.
Yeah, as I was saying, applying to the situation where Jesus was in, he was preparing for his battle on the cross against Satan, and he'll win that.
Yeah.
This facts is easy to. He's facing the King of Kings, and this pretender would be easy to lick. So he's just a distraction. His main mission was really to fight Satan on the cross, and he will prove himself victorious then.
Yeah, that's exactly how Herod would be a distraction from the main goal. And remember, as he's in Perea, he's on his way to Jerusalem not too long from now. He's getting close to his death. Okay. Question 611. Why did Jesus not worry about being taken in Perea? Okay, just to catch Maya up where we are, this is, we have just really started in these last couple of weeks on what is called the Perean ministry of Christ. We've got the book divided up there's different ways of organizing your study of the life of Christ. Some go by which year it was, like the first year of his ministry was called the year of popularity. Then you have the year of, the final year is the year of oppression. No, I'm sorry, the year of obscurity, then the year of popularity, and then the year of opposition. And sometimes the life of Christ is studied that way. I've chosen to use the areas of his ministry, like he had the Galilean ministry and several tours of preaching there, an early Judean ministry, a later Judean ministry. This is his ministry in Perea, and almost nobody knows about Perea. Okay, Perea, as we've explained before to others, is the area that's east of the Jordan River. And so it was like more of a Greek flavor there. They were less Jewish in that region. And Herod is one of the rulers in the northern region of Israel, in the Galilee region in the north, but he also had control over the eastern region as well under Perea. And so Jesus, right now, what we're looking at is how Herod, the Pharisees are warning him, hey, Herod wants to kill you, and we're doing Jesus' response to Herod. Okay, so question number 611 is just the second question in this section here. Question 611, why did Jesus not worry about being taken in Perea? And the answer is, okay, it is A. Jerusalem had a reputation of rejecting the prophets and even killing them, and so he would die there. Okay, so he would die there instead of Perea. He didn't worry about Herod killing him. Look at C. His time to die was not for a long while yet. Well, it cannot be said that Jesus was worried because his time was there, because it was supposed to be. It was not going to be a long while yet. But he was more concerned about heading out to Jerusalem. He knew that his death was imminent, and it was not going to be fulfilled in Perea. Okay, looking at B, Pilate in Judea was a bigger threat than Herod in Perea. We want to remember that Pilate was a Roman governor who had been given the power over the southern district of Judea. And so he's going to meet up with Pilate later on. Herod was up in the north all right, but neither of them was either more of a threat or less of a threat. Okay? They were both the same threat, as in they were no threat at all. Okay, what was a threat was the people, the Jews, because they were the ones who were going to reject him and call for his death. Okay, looking at A, Jerusalem. Jerusalem had a reputation of rejecting the prophets and even killing them. And so he knew he was going to die there and not in Perea. So it was a greater representation of a threat. The reason why was because of the self-righteous Jews in that area. We want to remember that Jerusalem being the capital of Israel, and with Jerusalem being where the temple was, that's where you had your academies, that's where you had your higher rabbis, you had your priests that were located there, and so there was a lot more intensive religion down in the south. And as such, they were more studied. They were also more arrogant because of that. You have to say, the more educated and sophisticated that somebody is, the more possible it is to feel safe in one's judgments because of their pride in how smart they are. Now, we're not saying don't study. By all means, study. But when you couple that that intellectual pride with rebellion, it can make you overconfident and oversure of yourself, because in being prideful and rebellious, you don't want to hear anything that's going to counter you. Normally when somebody's educated, they're actually more aware of how much more there is to learn, and they typically are more humble. That's why you have some people that are so very sure of themselves, and they sound foolish, and they can't even tell how foolish they sound. But somebody who has studied more, somebody who's more of an expert, they're a little bit more of what they don't know. And so they can tend to be humble. So that would be the normal way it is, unless if you're prideful and rebellious, in which case you go in the opposite direction and you let that pride make you say, oh, well, I know for sure, and your judgments are going to be harsher. Let me get you before I go on any further. Go ahead. We'll take a microphone if you would. This is for people at home, by the way, Maya, for them to be able to hear what we're doing.
Going to say, I was just going to say, whether you like me saying this or not, the Greek philosophers said the exact same thing. Basically, I forget who it was that said, the more you know, people are really intelligent know that they don't know anything or whatever.
Yeah.
And then also the other thing, that our idea that comes from philosophers as well, I used to be able to quote it word for word, but I don't remember even who it is now that said it. But another thing is, when you think you know everything or whatever, you're unteachable.
Yeah,
too.
okay.
So,
Yeah, I like another modern saying, those who think they know everything annoy those of us who really do. Okay. Now, by the way, because of that intellectual arrogance and that pride and that rebellion, this is why it's more likely to see the prophets killed in Jerusalem. Okay? There's nothing so bad as a religious zealot who doesn't have enough really good reason to trust in himself. Consider this. The prophets would bring their strong messages to God's people, and it would especially be down in the Jerusalem area. So when you've got a prophet who really is from God, and he's got a strong message, and you've got an intellectually arrogant people, it's just ripe for all kinds of explosive things to happen. So when they reacted in a strong way due to their prideful self-righteousness, it would end in the prophet's strong death. So what Jesus is saying here is he knows, number one, he's going to Jerusalem to die, but he's also pointing out, and it's very likely for this to happen in Jerusalem. This is why he has avoided being in Jerusalem all this time and has centered his work up in the Galilee region. Okay, question 612. Jesus had a lament for Jerusalem. It's based on Luke 13:34. The question is, what was Jesus' lament for Jerusalem? Luke 13:34 says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which killest the prophets, and stonest them that are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, as a hen doth gather her brood under her wings, and you would not. Okay, so the answer is, okay, A. His will had always been to gather his chosen people together, but they rejected him by their will. Now, again, let's remember, you've actually got an extremely significant verse here. This is an extremely significant verse in theology. Looking at B and A together, they could not look at B. They could not hope to be gathered together because it was God's will to reject them. Okay, now does that sound funny all by itself? It was God's will. Did God will to reject? It was to reject Israel. Did God will for them to stay lost? No, God doesn't will for people to stay lost. However, the reason that this wrong answer is here is to enable us to talk about, again, one of my common subjects, I was saying one of my favorite subjects, okay, is Calvinism. Are you familiar with Calvinism at all? Oh, okay. We need to educate Maya a little bit. Okay, Calvinism. Okay. In Christian circles, ever since the 1500s in the Protestant Reformation, what they called Reformed theology or Calvinism has grown and shrunk at times, and it's kind of popular in a bunch of churches, and especially with young preachers. They tend to get swallowed up in this. Calvinism essentially, and by the way, they're Christian people. It's not like it's a cult. They're Christians, but they're a little bit misguided in this area, as we're going to show from this verse here. In Calvinism, one of the basic teachings is that God chooses which ones are going to get saved, and that he chooses some people that they're never going to get saved. Then it teaches that those who are chosen to salvation, they have no choice in it themselves. God's going to make them believe. Okay? She's going like this. Very good reaction. That's the right reaction to have. Okay. And that he's going to, and you're born again, right? Okay. And you got born again when you asked Jesus to be your Savior? Okay. Calvinism says first you get born again, then later on you get saved. Okay. Very good reaction. Okay. Because what they say is you get born again so that you're able to believe finally, and then God shows you the truth, and then you just say, oh, wow, I cannot resist this. And they call this God's irresistible grace, that your will, you cannot override God's will. And that's why this verse is going to be so important. Now, again, they're Christian people. They go, over time you'll get to see exactly where else they go awry. But this idea that God forces people to get saved, or that God forces them to believe, and God makes them believe whether they will it or not, this is covered by this very passage here. So when you read, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which kills the prophets and stonest them that are sent of thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together as a hen doth gather a brood under wings, and ye would not? We've got God's will versus man's will here. And men, although it's God's, a Calvinist would say it's God's will for somebody to believe, they're going to have to do it. Jesus is saying, no, their will was to not believe. And so evidently, their will has a place. And we call this, and you've probably heard this, we have free will. The Calvinist does not think you have free will. Okay, Brother Joe, before I go on.
Yeah, there's a few things I wanted to say to speak to that. First of all, Jesus wouldn't lament over it if he had already made it impossible.
Right, yes.
Wouldn't make sense. Second of all, he says thou would not. He doesn't say thou could not.
Right.
Because, and then again, if they couldn't, again, why the lament? It wouldn't make any sense. It just contextually, grammatically, in any way that you read the passage, obviously theologically, and in any way, shape, or form, that whole sequence does not make sense in the, within the framework of Calvinism. Not at all.
Exactly. One of the things I like to point out is the grammar. This is why you should have paid attention back in the 5th grade and done good on grammar, okay? And if you didn't get it in 5th grade, you should have studied in 6th grade and 7th grade until you got it. Where it says, how often would I have gathered? Now, you would think that the word gathered is the verb, and that would is an auxiliary verb that modifies the idea of gathered. But no, it's a verb in its own right in Greek. And it means he willed. It was his will to gather them. That was God's will. And then when it says, but ye would not, the same verb is being used there, that they willed, they exercised their will to not accept it. And so this is one of the great passages. I've never encountered any commentaries where a Calvinist has commented on this. Maybe I should look a little bit harder too on that. Somebody else, you had Brother Tone, Sister Nancy, yes.
I was just going to ask you, how do they deal with this verse that says plainly that they would not?
Yeah, I'm going to make a note to look that up, to see if I can see anything more on that, but I've never seen anything. Okay, now look at C. Look at C. This is interesting. It looks a little curious, I should hope. By God's grace, they could not accept him. Okay, that's where Joe was saying, it doesn't say could, it says would. Okay, how is it that it's God's grace? I mean, God's grace means that God loves us unconditionally, and that he's going to save us in spite of ourselves. He doesn't save us because of our works. He saves us because of our faith. We placed our faith in Jesus. So if grace means placing your faith in Jesus, then that's sort of the opposite of not being able to accept him. Here's why I put that question or that answer in there like this. Okay. In Calvinism, this whole aspect of total depravity of man, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and perseverance of the saints, they titled that Doctrines of Grace. So inside their title, Doctrines of Grace, they would include that God has predestined some people to go to hell, and he's chosen them to burn. He's chosen that they should burn. So I don't see how they call it Doctrines of Grace. But that's the title for the whole subject that they have there. That's why that answer's in there. Okay, so if you ever encounter this as an issue, somebody thinks, if you talk to somebody, they think, oh, you know, I'm not one of God's chosen ones. I can't get saved. So, well, yes, you can. Okay? No, it's God's will. No, God's will for the world is for everybody to be saved. Some people exercise their will and don't accept the gospel. But everybody has at least the opportunity to do that. Any other thoughts there? Brother Joe, yes.
Yeah, I know that Calvinism would put their own spin on it, but Romans 10:13 says, "For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved."
Yeah. Or John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall perish.
Yeah, whosoever includes anybody.
Yeah. Now, and what they do,
I know they create a subset of chosen
yes,
people,
it's whosoever of
the
chosen
elect, of the elect.
And then the world is the world of the chosen ones, the
Yeah.
elect. And so they find ways to limit
It requires a lot of mental gymnastics.
Yes, it does. It does. Now, by the way, on this, I think they're very wrong. It doesn't totally mess up their Christianity, and I'm happy to say that when a Calvinist goes out to talk to somebody about Jesus, they actually say the same thing that the Arminians do. Arminianism is the opposite of Calvinism. We're somewhere in between. Okay, and they sound just like we do. We all say, "Would you like to ask Jesus Christ to be your Savior?" Okay, so at least we have that going for him. Brother Joe, yes.
I was going to say,
Microphone. Wait, let's get a microphone so they can hear you at home.
I guess, I don't know how people think about it when they read through it, or how many people just pass over it and just, it's in the back of their head. But he's saying that he's the one that was trying to gather them from, he's saying that I was dealing with you guys
Yeah.
throughout history. I'm God. I'm the one that tried to gather you together and you rejected me.
Yeah.
And so he's claiming to be God as well in this verse. 'Cause
Yeah,
he says,
yeah, really.
I would have gathered you, but you would
Yeah.
not.
I think a lot of people do just read over it, they just gloss through it and don't, when you're reading the scriptures, sometimes, many times, we're reading things that have great application, and we're sort of taking the more obvious lessons a lot of times. But yeah, the people should look at that one closely. Okay, somebody else? Okay. Okay, question 613. When would God's people finally accept Jesus? And it's based on verse 35. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate, and verily I say unto you, you shall not see me until the time come when you shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. And we've got three similar answers here. So the true answer is, it is C. When they would truly say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord, at the millennium. At the millennium. When you look at the Old Testament, especially in the minor prophets, and the major prophets too, but the minor, I was reading the book of Zechariah the other day, and I was just thinking to myself, man, how so very clear this is about Jesus coming again, the second coming. There's so much in there that is speaking of the end times. You would think maybe the prophets would be fussing at the different sins that the people were going through. But all of them, almost all of the minor prophets, I probably should go out on a limb and say all of them, have a lot of messianic end times scriptures in them. And so that's when they would say it and truly mean it. Look at A. Okay, would they accept Jesus when they would truly say, "Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord" at the triumphal entry? No. Okay, the triumphal entry, they did actually say that. They were insincere. Those same people, it has been said, several days later were calling out, "Crucify him." So there was not a lot of sincerity. Now, why would they say that at all? Well, the most obvious reason is because the people they were recognizing that this was the Messiah. Jesus had been teaching and preaching for 3 years, and so now they're seeing him come in, and they're all impressed with all of the healings that have been done, and so they're ready to recognize that he is the Messiah. But it's, like I said, it's insincere. But you have coupled with this what exactly was going on. They were taking this phrase from Psalm 118. Okay? Psalm number 118 is part of a collection of psalms that were recited on the holy days. And so when they were already in the mode of being ready to recite Psalm number 118 anyhow, they see Jesus coming along and they connect the dots that this is the Messiah. And so they're primed in order to recognize the Messiah. They do recognize the Messiah, but they are insincere about it. So this was, I mean, they had every reason to be sincere, but not yet. Okay, B, when they would truly say, "Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord" at the resurrection. Well, no, the resurrection occurs before the tribulation. We know of the tribulation, being the day of the Lord's wrath, part of the day of the Lord's wrath. The day of the Lord's wrath covers the 7-year period, and it also, the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord covers the 7-year tribulation period and the millennium. It's kind of encompassing, and it can refer to any part of that time period as the day of the Lord. And it's also known by another phrase, the time of Jacob's trouble. Jacob's trouble, because partly because Jacob is going to be the recipient of trouble, and partly because Jacob is going to be giving trouble. Okay, they're going to be the cause of trouble in the world. Right now, the Jews, the children of Israel, who was Jacob, the Jews have been a source of trouble in the world as people giving into Satan's influence have been anti-Semitic. When you see the anti-Semitism going on in the world today, it is growing all over again. It's amazing to me that people who saw the Holocaust back in the 40s, how they can lose sight of that. General Eisenhower, when he came into the area and he saw what was happening in the death camps in Germany, he said, "You get the videographers in, you get the film crews in here. We need to have pictures of this. We need to have video of this." I don't know if he said video. We need to have movies taken of this, because people will not believe our report. They need to see exactly what happened, because he knew that people would lose sight of this over time and say that it didn't happen. Sure enough, today we have what we call Holocaust deniers, who want to say, "Oh, it didn't really happen." Oh no, it did very much happen. And that same sentiment that's been here for the last couple of thousand years, as people called the Jews Christ killers and things like that, they are today coming back in full force, and it has even infected certain kinds of churches to be rejecting of Israel and to be standing against Israel. And so it's going to be time of Jacob's trouble. They are going to be there in the tribulation time. Remember that there's going to be the 144,000 Jewish preachers in that time. Well, they're there because they weren't saved. They got saved after the tribulation started. It's at that point that they're going to see and recognize Jesus, that they missed their Messiah. Zechariah 13 Verses 1 to 6 says, "In that day there shall be a fountain opened to the house of David and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness. It shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols out of the land, and they shall no more be remembered. And also I will cause the prophets and the unclean spirit to pass out of the land. But he shall say, I am no prophet, I am an husbandman, for man taught me to keep cattle from my youth up. And one shall say unto him, What are these wounds in thine hands? Then he shall answer, Those with which I was wounded in the house of my friend." During the tribulation, they're going to realize they missed the boat. So it's not at the rapture. When the rapture hits, we're out of here. Christ is coming back in the clouds, remember? We're going to be caught up in the clouds to meet him in the air. And then begins the reign of the Antichrist. So the Jews don't have a chance to say, "Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord." At the millennium, at the start of the millennium, at the end of the tribulation, when Jesus returns to the earth to reign on the earth, then they're going to be able to hail him finally as their Messiah with all sincerity. Okay, so it's going to be in the second coming is specifically at the end of the tribulation. The rapture occurs before the tribulation, and then the actual second coming is at the beginning of the millennium. Yes.
Just going back to the previous verse where he was talking about gathering them together. Another obvious thing I forgot to mention, but when he says, "Behold, thy house is left desolate," he's talking about the future destruction of Israel and the dispersion of the Jews. Well, not that word "house" also is used for Israel, the house of Israel, the word in Greek.
Yeah, you could, yeah. Okay.
And the repeated rejection of him and God, because he's God. The repeated rejection of God leads them to be dispersed and destroyed because of it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say set aside. They're going to be set aside.
Well,
because they're not going to be ultimately destroyed.
Desolate, it's like a wilderness,
Yeah.
just basically dispersed and
Yeah, and as we're going to see
deserted.
next Sunday when we have Juan Corrales, he's not Jewish, by the way. I wanted to make sure. By the way, Joe, did Nancy text you or message you that we did get the news release in? Yes. Yes, we got it in. Okay, so he's going to be coming to talk about the Fall Feast of Israel, and certainly there are a lot of Jews who have gotten saved, but in general, Judaism is desolate. Okay. Okay, question, section 107, we're going to close with. Section 107, see page 180. Okay, I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking, yeah, this is a good point to break for this afternoon. And we'll go to the parable of the dinner invitation on Thursday evening.